When Illit debuted, many people accused them of copying New Jeans. But here's the thing, I don't think most people were actually arguing about plagiarism. I think they were arguing about influence, and those aren't the same thing. Before we can answer whether Illit copied New Jeans, we need to answer one question. What does plagiarism actually mean? According to the Oxford English Dictionary, plagiarism is defined as the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. A simple example would be copying someone else's essay and submitting it as if you had written it yourself. That's plagiarism. So when people accuse one group of plagiarizing another, that's the standard we're working with. Not these outfits look similar. Not this concept reminds me of another group. The question is whether someone else's original work has actually been taken and presented as their own. Imagine Illit had debuted with a song called Attention. Not just a similar concept, not just a similar outfit. I mean the exact same song title, the exact same melody, the exact same choreography, the exact same music video, and the exact same creative direction as New Jeans' Attention. That would be plagiarism. Now compare that to what people usually point to online. A similar Y2K aesthetic, a youthful concept, a dance move, riding a bike in a music video, or a hip-hop inspired dance break. Those things may be similar, but similarity is not the same as plagiarism. Creative industries borrow ideas, follow trends, and build upon successful concepts all the time. If we want to understand what actual plagiarism looks like in K-pop, we don't have to imagine it. We've already seen it. One of the clearest examples is Lee Hyori's 2010 album H Logic. Several songs on the album were later discovered to have been stolen from foreign artists by the production team that supplied them. The songs were not simply inspired by earlier works, they were unauthorized copies. The producers falsely claimed the music was original, leading to lawsuits, criminal convictions, financial damages, and the album's reputation being permanently damaged. That is what plagiarism looks like. Plagiarism is the unauthorized copying of another person's original work while presenting it as your own. Once we understand that distinction, the conversation around groups like Illit and New Jeans becomes much more interesting, because the real debate is no longer about plagiarism, it's about influence. If plagiarism isn't the answer, then what is? Influence. Every creative industry is shaped by successful ideas. Fashion follows trends, films inspire other films, video games borrow mechanics from one another, music is no different. When an artist or group introduces something that resonates with audiences, it doesn't stay unique forever. Companies study what worked, producers experiment with similar sounds, and new artists naturally become inspired by what came before them. That's not theft, it's how genres evolve. New Jeans are a perfect example of this. When they debuted in 2022, their music stood out because it arrived at the right moment. Their easy listening sound, Y2K inspired visuals, and youthful image felt refreshing compared to many of the louder, more performance-focused trends that had dominated beforehand. Songs like Attention, Hype Boy, Ditto, and OMG weren't just successful, they influenced the direction of the industry. So when newer groups begin using nostalgic styling, softer production, or youthful concepts, that doesn't automatically mean they're copying New Jeans. More often than not, it means New Jeans helped shape what became popular. Ironically, being imitated is often one of the clearest signs that an artist has had a genuine cultural impact, and this is why the Illit are copying New Jeans argument falls flat, because once again, there is a difference between copying and taking inspiration. Hype seeing the success of a girl group and building another group on a similar creative foundation in the hope of achieving similar success for these girls is not a valid case of copying. So if taking inspiration is a normal part of how creative industries evolve, why do these accusations appear every time a new group debuts? The answer is simple. People compare what they already know. When a group becomes as influential as New Jeans, they become the reference point. Every youthful concept, every easy listening song, every Y2K inspired outfit, and every natural looking music video gets measured against them. That's exactly what happens when an artist changes the direction of an industry. But here's where the conversation often loses its balance. Illit aren't the only group to debut after New Jeans with softer production, nostalgic visuals, or a youthful image. Groups like Kiki, Hearts to Hearts, and Unchild have all entered an industry that New Jeans helped reshape. Yet Illit receives a disproportionate amount of these comparisons, largely because both groups exist under the Hybe umbrella and the allegations that Minhee Jin placed onto them so early in their career. That connection makes the comparison feel more direct, even though similar influences can be found across companies throughout K-pop. Once a trend becomes successful, every agency begins exploring it in their own way. That's not unique to HYBE, it's happened for decades. The industry has always moved in cycles. One successful concept inspires another, audiences gradually move toward new trends, and the process repeats. New Jeans weren't the first group to influence the industry, and they certainly won't be the last. However, influence doesn't mean a trend will stay at the top forever. Every genre, concept, and style eventually reaches a point where audiences begin looking for something new. This is known as genre fatigue. The more a particular sound dominates an industry, the more listeners naturally begin craving something different. K-pop has gone through this cycle countless times. EDM-heavy choruses gave way to tropical house. Tropical house eventually faded into girl crush concepts. Girl crush made room for brighter, more nostalgic sounds. Then New Jeans helped popularize easy listening music, Y2K aesthetics, and a more relaxed style of performance. That influence was enormous, but it also meant other companies began exploring similar ideas. As more groups adopted those sounds and visuals, audiences gradually started searching for something fresh again. That's not because New Jeans suddenly became a worse group. It happens to almost every successful trend in entertainment. You can even see this in the reception to later releases. Some listeners who love songs like Hype Boy, Ditto, or Super Shy began saying they wanted something with more energy or a stronger performance focus. At the same time, songs with bigger choreography and more dance-oriented production began attracting attention again. That doesn't erase New Jeans' impact. It simply shows that public taste is constantly moving. The biggest irony is that New Jeans may have influenced the very shift away from the style they helped popularize. That's what happens when a group changes an industry. Their success inspires others, the market becomes saturated with similar ideas, and eventually audiences begin looking for the next evolution. Plagiarism is the unauthorized copying of someone else's original work while presenting it as your own. K-pop has experienced genuine plagiarism scandals before, and those cases involve stolen music, legal action, and criminal convictions, not similar concepts or shared aesthetics. We've also learned that influence is how every creative industry grows. New Jeans didn't just become one of the biggest groups of their generation because they were successful, they became influential. Their music, styling, and creative direction helped shape the industry around them, and naturally, other companies began exploring similar ideas. But influence has a funny way of changing an industry. The more successful a trend becomes, the more people adopt it, and eventually, audiences begin looking for something new. That's not a sign that the original group failed, it's proof that they left a lasting mark. So to answer the question, no, ILIT is not copying New Jeans.